This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor. On this Tuesday, there's a lot to talk about. This week, as many of you saw, the President of the United States floated the idea of nationalizing voting in the United States. That's right. Voting in the United States taken over by the federal government, taken over by Donald Trump himself. Keep in mind, according to the Constitution, your states manage how you vote and where you vote, not the President of the United States. But Donald Trump doesn't like how things look for the 2026 midterms. And we'll talk about that today because there's another story that ties into worries about the midterms, a story that continues to get more and more suspicious, and that is the Director of National Intelligence, America's top spy chief, was spotted days ago in Fulton County, Georgia, as part of an FBI raid to go get the 2020 ballots. The 2020 ballots that Donald Trump claimed were rife with fraud, and in the same place, he demanded that officials find 11,000 votes to help put him over the top. There's new video from that raid with Tulsi Gabbard, and we'll talk about that more today. In addition, Democrats are surging in the polls and in elections around the country, further adding to Donald Trump's panic and his desire to do something to rig the midterms. Now, I will just say that just before we went live, Donald Trump said in a meeting in the Oval Office that it was time to move on from the Epstein files. Let's not forget the exploding controversy this week about the Epstein files, the fact that Donald Trump's name has been mentioned 5,300 sometimes in those files, and now he wants the nation to move on. Perhaps another reason he's creating these distractions about meddling in the vote. We'll talk about that and everything else today with our special guest, Allison Gill. You know her from Mueller, She Wrote. You know her from the podcast, The Daily Beans, a pro-democracy warrior and someone who has been on all of these stories the past few months. This is Miles Taylor. This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the Defiant. Thrilled to have you with us today. We're going to jump in first on this story about nationalizing voting, because this is a really big deal, folks. This is a really, really big deal. Is people on the MAGA side of the political spectrum have said for years, almost every year since Donald Trump has been elected, that it was Trump derangement syndrome for people to worry about Donald Trump trying to take over elections, take over this country, and act like a dictator. Well, until Donald Trump himself says those words. Yesterday, he issued a call for Republicans to, yes, nationalize voting in this country. Take a look at what he said.
You know, amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. And we have states that are so crooked and they're counting votes. We have states that I won that show I didn't win. Now you're going to see something in Georgia where they were able to get with a court order the ballots. You're going to see some interesting things come out. But, you know, like the 2020.
Takeover voting in many places, maybe 15 places. I wonder if that number of 15 corresponds with the number of states Donald Trump this week has threatened to cut off federal money to. You know what those states are? They're all Democratic states. They're all blue states. Perhaps is that the 15 states Donald Trump is thinking of where we need to nationalize elections, where Republicans need to take over? Whether this was a dog whistle or something more direct, it seems as though those in Donald Trump's inner circle are backpedaling because they're freaked out by what the president said. Today, after ending a partial government shutdown, both Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson, the two top Republicans in Congress, took questions from the press, and they were asked about this.
Do you agree with President Trump saying that we should nationalize some of the federal elections in the country? And also, do you have any concerns about DNI Gabbard's presence at that Fulton County operation in Georgia?
I don't know what she was doing in Fulton County. You'll have to ask her about that. But with respect to nationalizing elections, I think the president has clarified what he meant by that, and that is that he supports the SAVE Act. So with respect to whether or not that signifies ensuring that only citizens of this country vote in our elections, that's something I think we all agree with. There are other views probably when it comes to nationalizing or federalizing elections, but I think at least on that narrow issue, which is what the SAVE Act gets at, I think that's what the president was addressing.
Quick follow-up on elections. The president says that he wants Republicans to nationalize elections. Do you agree with him, and do you have confidence in how elections are conducted right now heading into the midterm?
We have thoughtful debate about our election system every election cycle and sometimes in between. We know it's in our system the states have been in charge of administering their elections. What you're hearing from the president is his frustration about the lack of some of the blue states, frankly, of enforcing these things and making sure that they are.
Okay, so the top Republicans in Congress are basically saying to us, you just heard the president wrong. Well, folks, lest my ears deceive me, I'm pretty sure we heard him right the first time. And to double check, let's just go to Donald Trump, who moments ago spoke about this in the Oval Office.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections? And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit. Take a look at Pennsylvania. Take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
I have got to emphasize those words. A state is an agent of the federal government. Where are all the states' rights conservatives in America right now? The same ones who are worried about protecting the Second Amendment that Donald Trump says doesn't matter, the Second Amendment that Donald Trump said didn't protect Alex Preddy from a lawful concealed carry weapon that he took out into the public. Now, that same administration is saying states' rights aren't a thing. Your state is just an agent of the federal government. And Donald Trump wants it taken over so he can decide how the election is run. I want to bring into the conversation my Defiance.org co-founder, Xander Schultz. Xander, this is pretty on the nose. This is one of those classic Trump's allies say, oh. This is like, I don't know if our viewers will remember in the early 2000s when Karl Rove had this whiteboard, when he would do like coverage on TV and talk about elections, and he had a great whiteboard. You're the new Karl Rove. I know it's what you always wanted to be with your impeachment alert.
A little less high tech than Karl Rove had.
I so wish, first of all, I got to say our producer Mercedes is a badass for catching those two things in such short succession. I only wish we could just call Senate Leader John Thune and House Speaker Mike Johnson back to the podium right now and say, hey guys, well, here's the clip. The president says, no, that's what he wants to do. He wants to take over elections. States are just an agent of the federal government. Do you agree with that?
I was looking up what's the best quote from one of our founding fathers on this. And James Madison by far had the best quote. He said that if the federal government controlled elections, it could pervert its powers into instruments for destroying the very existence of the union. And somewhere in there is a great Trump wants to pervert the powers of the government shirt in there. We got to workshop it a little bit, but I think there's some swag in there. Shout out to James Madison and all the founding fathers who saw this coming and tried to get ahead of it.
Shout out to James Madison from the Defiance Daily program. Thanks, James. Big fans of your work here.
Big fan, great quotes. Thank you.
Big fans. Okay, first of all, I got to ask you one thing. Sorry to do this in front of the audience. Can you text me that? That's going to be like my night of social media.
It's really good. There's a t-shirt coming for sure.
Promoting
its powers t-shirt.
JMAD. We'll go out there and push the JMAD quote really hard. Yeah, if you just text that to me, brother, that was a good catch. I also want to say, Xander, there was just, I think, something so extraordinary about the looks on their faces as they were trying to backpedal this in a way that made sense, that totally isn't even, like, you can't even buy it. John Thune was standing there saying, I think what the president meant to say is he was talking about this piece of legislation, the SAVE Act, bloop, bloop, blop, blop. I'm going to tell you right now, I never knew Donald Trump to understand a single piece of legislation we put in front of him. And remember, one of his constitutional duties is to sign pieces of legislation. And many of those times I would be in the Oval Office with him at the actual signing ceremony when you're explaining to the president what he's signing. And I'm telling you, that was like explaining quantum physics to a 3-year-old anytime, no matter what the bill was, as you would try to explain to the president what it did. And it's just his eyes would glaze over and he would immediately start talking about something else. There's a witch hunt against me. The FBI is trying to come after me. So there's no way, John Thune, that Donald Trump, when he made those comments about taking over elections, was thinking about the nuances of the SAVE Act. Unless, Xander, you have a more charitable interpretation of Donald Trump's perception of his duties.
You've had these like behind closed doors meetings with him, and it sounds like the personality is exactly the same as the in front of the camera's personality. It's so, I think there was this like hope when he first got elected that he was a slightly different guy behind closed doors. It is crazy. Mike Johnson's job right now is insane. You just wake up and get fed an insane line that you have to sell, and you're not at all the bullshit artist that Trump is, right? Trump is actually kind of great at lying to people all the time and saying it like a mafia boss in ways that don't incriminate himself and kind of dance around it. These other guys aren't. You said, where are all the states' rights conservatives and the gun rights conservatives? In DC, they can't be found, but we saw, we're going to get into this in a couple segments. Some of them are now voting for Democrats because we're seeing districts take huge fucking swings. So they exist in America, if not in DC.
It's kind of like how Donald Trump cobbled together this bizarre, strange bedfellows coalition to win the presidency of like blue collar voters and folks who had even been Bernie voters. The opposite thing is now happening to him. He is creating, by virtue of all of his corruption and abuses of power, this really strange bedfellows coalition. I mean, we've got the Mamdanis in New York, the avowed socialists, and the Marjorie Taylor Greens on the same side.
Right.
This man. I mean, that's truly extraordinary. I mean, that is a remarkable feat, Donald Trump, that you have brought Mamdani and Marjorie Taylor Greene together. But you've done it. And I got to hand it to you, Donald Trump. You've done it.
Yeah, we've got a pretty big tent. We're rivaling Cirque du Soleil at this point in terms of largest tent. The coalition against Trump is growing by the week in like pretty significant ways, like ostracizing the 2A guys, racial profiling the police in Minneapolis. He's speed running building that coalition. So for giving shout outs, another shout out to Donald Trump building the coalition. Thank you, sir, for all of those people we didn't expect to be on our side.
We just saw the sheriff in Hennepin County. That's the county in Minnesota that includes Minneapolis. We saw the sheriff in Hennepin County come out, I don't know if this was today or yesterday, and basically say, this is happening because of you, America. He's like, this is happening because of you, and you've got to fix this. Like, this is nonsense. I mean, we've got law enforcement around this country stepping up and saying, this is out of control. And of course, as we've talked about, and we'll talk about more today, prosecutors in this country having to now probably soon charge federal agents with crimes because the federal government won't police their own people anymore. It's bananas.
Yeah. I mean, we've all got to step up, right? It's great seeing the prosecutors through FAFO start doing what they're doing. The people starting to rally and organize and win elections, as we're going to talk about shortly. And I think one of the things that we'd like to see from people in power right now, and we talked about this, with Mike Schmidt when he was talking about prosecutors, is not trying to run the calculus on if a certain effort will win or not. We just want to see fights. And even if you don't win that fight or you're not able to take it to completion, when we talked about arresting ICE agents, well, what if they, try to have a gunfight? It's okay to back down, police officers in that case. But it'd be great to see you guys attempt to do it, expose the ICE agents for what they are, et cetera. We'd love to see that at all levels and a little bit of a disregard for, can I win this fight, in the most complete way possible?
Well, let me shift us, Xander, to our second story of the day, because we're going to talk a little bit about Tulsi Gabbard. And I want to get your reactions to this, too, it's not just what Donald Trump said about nationalizing elections that's causing Republicans to nervously backpedal. Last week, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was in attendance of a raid led by FBI agents into Georgia's largest voting center. And there, the federal government collected state voting records and even absentee ballots that are not backed up in the state's systems. And then last Friday, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche was asked this exact question. Why was the Director of National Intelligence there?
To follow up on that, regarding Fulton County, can you explain Tulsi Gabbard's role in DOJ activity? Could you please explain Tulsi Gabbard's role in DOJ activity regarding the Fulton County search?
What do you mean her role?
It was reported that
she happened to be present in Atlanta. I mean, yes, I saw the same photos you did. I mean, she doesn't work for the Department of Justice or the FBI. She's an extraordinarily important part of this administration. This administration coordinates everything we do as a group. And so I think her presence shouldn't be, there shouldn't be questioned. Of course, I mean, that's a big part of her job. And so the fact that she was present in Atlanta that day, is something that shouldn't surprise anybody.
That she happened to be present that day. So in other words, the Director of National Intelligence just happened to be in the neighborhood, just happened to be there when the FBI was raiding the voting systems of a key county. Well, today, the White House is now changing that narrative. Again, you misunderstood. We wanted her to be there, they said. Here is National Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt attempting to explain that.
Was Tulsi Gabbard involved in a domestic law enforcement search in Georgia?
Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and the security of our American elections. She's working directly alongside the FBI Director, Kash Patel. This is a coordinated whole-of-government effort to ensure that our elections, again, are fair and transparent moving forward. I don't see anything wrong with the President tasking a cabinet member to pursue an issue that most people want to see solved. Maybe you don't, but I know many Americans do want to make sure our elections are protected, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard is focused on doing.
Is there something specific that the president has concerns about that led him to ask the Director of National Intelligence to go down to Fulton County?
I just explained the president's concerns with voting in this country, and it's something that he wants to see solved for future elections, and I think that's something all Americans can get behind.
Well, then it's also come out since then that not only did Tulsi Gabbard not just happen to be in the neighborhood, she was in the neighborhood and at that raid at the direction of the President of the United States. And it gets worse than that because Tulsi Gabbard and those FBI agents got on the phone with the President of the United States, who wanted to talk to them about the raid. So I want to say this, anyone who thought that it was an exaggeration for us to say Donald Trump was turning the FBI and ICE into his pocket police, into his secret police, need to understand that he is now personally engaging in these investigations. He is now personally calling in and directing federal agents. That's a big red flag. And I wrote down something else that Caroline Leavitt said. She said in that clip, I don't see anything wrong with Tulsi Gabbard being there. Well, I'll tell you this. Tulsi Gabbard sent a letter today to Capitol Hill that said the reason she was there is she has authorities pursuant to Executive Order 13848. That this executive order signed in 2018 gives the Director of National Intelligence, apparently, the authority to show up in an American county to dig into its voting systems. Well, unfortunately for Tulsi Gabbard, I am one of the authors of that executive order. And people have heard me say this recently, and I'll say it again. The executive order gives her absolutely, unequivocally, no such authority. So she wrote that letter to Congress. She lied, at least according to one of the co-authors of that executive order. I wonder whether they will get her under oath on that. I would like to hear what she has to say. I want to bring back into the conversation Defiance.org co-founder Xander Schultz. Xander, this was another whopper, my friend. Tulsi Gabbard happened to be doing a stroll past this building and just happened upon an FBI raid. To the real explanation, the president wanted her there.
It's like our favorite high school excuse that we told our mom when we were near trouble at the national scale. There's probably more famous.
At that party drinking. I was just walking through the neighborhood at 1:30 in the morning with a case of beer that fell from the sky into my hands.
Scott Peterson just happened to be fishing. OJ Simpson happened to be in the neighborhood. We've heard this at scale before.
Yeah.
Also. No one believes it. It's crazy that there's like, so the one thing I was saying that, maybe they aren't as good at BSing as Trump, but they are like becoming expert gaslighters where they're not even trying to pretend there's evidence out there. Miles, what can journalists, you've been in the room for some of these press conferences and whatnot, what can journalists do better to hold these people accountable, to hold the facts up to them? Sometimes when I see these press conferences, it's like they give a BS answer and then it's volleyed to another journalist who asks a completely different question. Is there any coalition between these journalists that can help kind of have these folks face the facts in these moments?
That's a good question. My biggest concern is that you still see with a lot of these outlets, especially like the big broadcast news organizations, they have this built-in, almost reflexive desire to do a both sides thing. In other words, if they're going to if they're going to cover, something the political opposition says about Donald Trump, they also have to just air his explanation rather than just calling the truth the truth. The truth doesn't always have two sides. The truth has one side. And that's where, when they talk about Tulsi Gabbard being there and saying something like, I have the ability to go check out these systems pursuant to Executive Order 13848, be easy enough for any of those networks to say, and actually, that was a lie. Because you perfectly show that it was a lie. I mean, they need to stop the both sidesism. And you can do that without being partisan. I mean, I go to you and I, like, you're a socialist, I'm a conservative. We still are able to incredibly align around very key and obvious facts about.
In fact, there's so much BS. We don't get to talk about our economic theories ever because we're just out here talking about all the lies that are happening.
Because they're just, breaking the Constitution every day. I do want to throw in here, Xander, we should take a look at this. Things got so nutty in Fulton County that it looked like even the agents on the scene didn't know what was happening. And there was total disarray when it came to their warrant. And the Atlanta Journal-Constitution published this today. They published the body cam footage from those Fulton County police who were there when the federal officers showed up. Take a look.
So we have the right to be here, and we've been very nice.
So did anybody get a physical copy of the search warrant?
No.
When did they get here?
About 12:30.
Just unannounced?
Unannounced.
I'm going to try and have the names of everybody that was out here. I already know how it's going to go, but if they refuse, that's on them. Thank you. All right, so we were given very limited information.
So we have a search warrant for us, like literally an entire location. Okay. But now we're going to end up amending another search warrant for another location called state. So we'll have that pretty soon. So
this is all in regards to election side stuff.
Where we're here, right? So I can't discuss more.
I got you.
More than that, but as long as we keep. The big thing is just trying to keep media. Someone let media in here and keep media clear out of here.
What's happening now is that their warrant is wrong. It had the wrong, it's not in elections possession, it's in clerk's possession, so it had the wrong department.
So on our end, nobody received a copy of...
The attorneys asked them for it, they finally gave them a copy. Then the attorney's like, it's wrong, so they're allegedly waiting for the judge to update it.
What was wrong on there?
It didn't say, it just says, elections, which we don't have, in which they knew that before they got here.
The warrant will be amended slightly, but for all intents and purposes, what they had is what it's going to look like. We wanted to let her facilitate us moving through the building to unlock the gates so that we don't have to breach it, because one way or the other, the records are coming with us today.
Xander, I want to get your reaction to that.
I just feel for these individuals that are put in these situations. You're having a bunch of federal officers say they have the right, or kind of hand waving about the things that look fishy. And there's almost no way to prepare those individuals, or maybe there is, and maybe that's something to explore, to stand up with force in those moments in the ways they can, because you're socially conditioned to acquiesce and to support when authorities like that are saying they have, the right to do X, Y, Z. It's a really challenging position to put individuals in. I'm not surprised the Trump administration is doing the things they're doing, but I'm wondering how to fortify those individuals, the police officers, kind of like the lower level people across the country that are being faced with having to comply with illegal actions.
Yeah. You know what this makes me think of? There was a great article on this, and I'll look this up in a moment because I'm not going to remember who wrote this. This was somewhere in the past few days, but it was a great comparison. I don't know if you remember Jade Helm, Xander. There was this, I think it was back in 2015 or 2016 when Obama was president. The U.S. Army had these training exercises, okay, across several states, Texas and a couple of other states. They were practicing their missions and they were doing all this role playing stuff. And at the time, conservatives completely freaked out, right? Alex Jones and other conspiracy theorists said that these exercises were a cover for Barack Obama to institute martial law and to cut against the Second Amendment and to violate states' rights and to potentially invade. And that went from the fringes to the mainstream. I mean, conservatives in Congress were saying, Jade Helm and these exercises are about the federal government coming and taking over. And now here we see federal law enforcement agents again and again, state after state, being sent in, basically overriding state law, constitutional rights, violating the Second Amendment, going against local police officers. Like every single day we have a new video of this, and it's hard to even keep up. But I mean, where are those folks? Where are those folks who are so scared about Jade Helm and the federal government coming in and trampling on states' rights when we're seeing that happen in real time all across the country?
Yeah. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, we are seeing popularity shift over time. It's not maybe the giant sway you would hope it would be all at once when you see any one of these things, but we are seeing the popularity turn on Trump. It's definitely not happening at the grass tops level. And there's definitely, I was looking through New York Post headlines the other day when we were looking for different stories, and the information bubble that people are living in can't be underestimated in the framing that they're hearing these certain stories. So that's where my mind goes. Fixing the information environment in some capacity or in many different ways is going to be key towards these events landing in the ways that they need to land.
Well, we do have an extraordinary guest with us today who has been following the Tulsi Gabbard scandal, the broader takeover election scandal, very, very closely. And I can't think of anyone better because folks probably first remember her as the person who was most zeroed in the United States of America on the Mueller investigation and everything that was happening with the Mueller investigation. She has since gone on to build a pro-democracy empire. Her name is Allison Gill. She's host at Daily Beans, and we are thrilled to have her here in the conversation. Allison, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you.
It's great to have you. I want to just start at the top end, just an open-ended question. What is your current reaction to all of this, Allison? Your current speculation about why the spy chief of the federal government is rummaging around in the ballots of private American citizens. By the way, in the United States, we have a secret ballot. You're allowed to, fill that out without the entire United States public getting to know your ballot. Why is she there rummaging around?
This goes back. My first immediate thought, why was she there? This goes back to when you were there, Miles. And I remember there being sort of a push by the Donald Trump administration, certain people in the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, to prove foreign election interference. And the reason that they wanted to do that was because in a meeting on December 18th, 2020, a couple weeks before the insurrection, one of the conspiracies laid out in Jack Smith's report on Volume 1 for the, violation of rights, peaceful transfer of power, one of the conspiracies was that Donald Trump was trying to prove foreign election interference so that he could seize voting machines. First, he asked DOJ, Bill Barr, hey, can you go get the voting machines? He's like, no, we don't see any fraud to justify that. Then he asked DHS, right? Hey, can you get the voting machines? Can I send ICE to get the voting machines? No, you can't do that. So on December 18th, he was like, well, what if we got the Pentagon? What if we sent the military to seize voting machines? And believe it or not, the voice of reason in that particular meeting was Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani said to the president, sir, you can't seize voting machines using the Pentagon unless there's foreign election interference. And then they got it in their heads. I think Sidney Powell and Mike Flynn drafted an executive order to seize voting machines, saying there was foreign election interference from Hugo Chavez and Italian satellites and whatever else they were trying to cook up. They tried to see if he could seize these voting machines, particularly in the swing states, using the military. And he couldn't get it to happen. And this was one of the conspiracies that eventually led to a meeting on January 2nd between a guy named Jeffrey Clark, who was kind of the architect of the fraudulent elector scheme, trying to send a letter to Georgia to say that we're investigating election fraud in your state. We need votes, and we think there's a problem. And we could flip. We think we might be able to get the electors for Trump. And then they set up the elector scheme and all that other stuff. Donald Trump told Jeffrey Clark to sit down with then DNI John Ratcliffe and said, John, tell him all about the foreign election interference. And John Ratcliffe said to Jeffrey Clark, we don't have any outcome determinative foreign election interference. There isn't any. And that really upset Donald Trump. And he's been trying to prove otherwise ever since. And the reason we know that that's what happened in that meeting is because Merrick Garland, when he seized Scott Perry's phone, was able to get text messages on Signal between Scott Perry, the guy who introduced Jeffrey Clark to Donald Trump, Representative Scott Perry, and Jeffrey Clark. There were text messages admitting that in that meeting there was no outcome determinative foreign election interference. And so, having failed at all these other ways to try to overturn the election and seize voting machines, he sent the mob to attack the Capitol. And so ever since then, and you know this, Miles, he's been trying to discredit everybody who said there was no election interference. He tried to set up an executive order against you and Chris Krebs, CISA, who said that there was no outcome determinative foreign election interference. He tried to still going after Jack Smith, saying that everything he came up with in Volume 1 is a bunch of BS. And so that is why I believe Tulsi Gabbard was there. I think she's there to fabricate some sort of foreign election interference in order to seize voting machines.
Well, and look, I don't think it's any coincidence that this week the White House basically ordered DOJ to accelerate those investigations into the Chris Krebses and the Miles Taylors and the other presidential enemies they want to get after. In fact, I think CNN reported that they're on a 2-month deadline and meeting every single day to decide whether they can go charge people. Why? Because they're doing this stuff at the same time the people who know that it was illegal for them to do are speaking out about it. They want to shut those people up. And I'm going to give you an example of that, Allison. I want to get a reaction to this. I think I can present screen here. This is like the type of thing that makes our producer nervous. Hold on. I'm going to share screen here. I'm going to share a document with you. And yeah. You know what?
Don't click the wrong window.
I'm going to let Xander ask a question first. Then I'm going to share screen and show you something that I think is very interesting. Xander, let me pivot over to you while I do some tech stuff right here.
Well, this is a question for both of you, really. I wonder when he is doing these, probes internally about how he can get access to these voting machines, are his ambitions a little bit more naked, or does he narcissistically believe that if he lost, there must be interference because it's impossible for him to lose? I just wonder if there's him on tape anywhere or him saying anything internally that's a little bit more naked in his intentions. Or are we just dealing with a narcissist that can't believe reality when it smacks him in the face?
Jack Smith has evidence that he knew that he lost the election. Everybody told him that he lost the election. He's got him saying, I can't believe I lost to this effing guy when, referring to Joe Biden. There's several instances of that, and that evidence was developed enough to go beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember, Mueller was like, well, I don't have enough evidence to show there's actual conspiracy between Russia and the Trump campaign. Right. Jack Smith says he did have that kind of evidence that was necessary to bring these charges. And now you've got Trump calling for the nationalization of elections. He wants control over the elections. He knows he's not supposed to have it, which goes against what you were talking about earlier, the states' rights. Where are all the people screaming about states' rights? We've got Ron Johnson just now appearing on TV saying we have to get rid of these voting machines. We've got Donald Trump saying we want to get rid of mail-in ballots. He wants to, there was a thing that came out, the Supreme Court, in their decision to order the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from Seacoast prison. And in that, they put a line in there that said, but remember, you must show due deference and regard to the President of the United States when it comes to foreign affairs. And he has been using that line to justify pretty much everything he's doing. ICE, boat strikes in Venezuela, CIA infiltrating Venezuela, capturing Maduro. Oh, and by the way, I wouldn't consider it unheard of for Maduro to show up and confess to interfering in the 2020 elections as a foreign agent in order to help Joe Biden. And now, we're seeing it. The messaging is starting, and that's why I'm very concerned. And I hope, I really, when it comes to this, all we can do as people is just vote. But it's going to take the lawyers and the law firms and organizations like Defiance to make sure, Mark Elias, for example, Democracy Docket, the lawyers that we've got at the DNC, DCCC, to make sure that if he does try to seize voting machines or calls himself an arbiter of elections when he is clearly not, to see if we can get injunctions and stop that and preserve our votes.
To that end, Allison, I found the thing that I want to put up there, and people might not be able to read it on the screen, but I urge them to just go look it up right now. This is the executive order they're talking about. This is the executive order they claim allows them to interfere in elections. It's Executive Order 13848, signed by the president September 12th, 2018. I was there. I was at the White House the day he signed it. I helped draft this document. This document basically just says at the beginning that the role of the Director of National Intelligence when it comes to securing elections is to submit a report to the president after 45 days after an election to say whether or not there was interference. That's it. It basically says 45 days after an election, the head of the intelligence community should submit a report to the president, letting the president know whether a foreign adversary interfered in the election or not. The point of that certification was to allow the Secretary of State and these other agencies to issue sanctions if a country like Russia or China interfered in the election. It doesn't say anything about giving the spy chief of the federal government the ability to go, bang around in voting machines. And in fact, Allison, I will tell you, and I would testify to this fact, we had discussions about that inside the federal government because we knew that wouldn't be legal. And so we wanted to make sure the president didn't sign an executive order that said his people had the power to do something illegal. So we included this language in the document. I'm going to read it to you. It says in this document that basically once this system is instituted to help the head of the intelligence community write a report to determine whether someone's interfered in the election, that it must be done in a way that protects law enforcement or other sensitive information and intelligence sources and methods, and, quote, maintains an appropriate separation between intelligence functions and policy and legal judgments, and ensures that efforts to protect electoral processes and institutions are insulated from political bias, protects freedom of speech, et cetera, et cetera. The lawyers put that language in there because we all knew the Director of National Intelligence didn't have the ability to go look at voting machines. If there actually was a hack of voting machines, that would be the job of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and solely the job of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and domestic law enforcement, not Tulsi Gabbard showing up and saying, I'm going to do a ride-along for this raid. Nothing in this executive order gives that authority. Nothing suggests, and even if, Allison, we had written this document totally wrong, even if we'd given the president a document that says your spy chief has the ability to poke around in elections, just because the president signed it wouldn't make it legal. Nothing in an executive order gets created out of whole cloth. The president can't invent new laws. An executive order just says, here's how we're applying existing law. So, I wonder how long they can hang their hat on documents any of us can Google right now and pretend they have magical authorities that they don't.
Well, I think we're going to see eventually something get up to the Supreme Court about the executive's role in elections. We got a little bit of a taste of it back when Mark Meadows, who, as you know, at the time was the chief of staff to the president, he wanted to remove his criminal charges out of Fulton County State Court in Georgia, out to the federal court. And the 11th Circuit decided, and this was written by Judge Pryor, who is an extremely conservative chief judge of the 11th Circuit, very good friends, by the way, with Clarence Thomas. And not only did he deny his ability to move his case out into federal court from state court, because that's kind of DOJ and federal court protection is not for former officials, only current officials. But he also said, number two, the reason that it's not is because you, even if you're the chief of staff to the president and have to do whatever the president says, neither you nor the president play any role in having oversight over any elections. So I have a little bit of hope that there are some conservative justices on this Supreme Court that truly believe still in a little bit of state sovereignty and states' rights and the Constitution when it comes to who administers and oversees elections. But I know that it's going to end up in the Supreme Court, and we're going to see a fight about how much due deference and regard the president gets when it comes to foreign election interference. And that is why Tulsi Gabbard is part of this.
Yeah, let me also say this. Right now, all these things that are happening in these states, if they violate state law, they're prosecutable. It's not like this just goes away. And here's the thing, the president's whole campaign about interfering elections at every turn potentially violates state law. Every time he's talking about nationalizing elections, he's flirting with a line that's in total breach of the U.S. Constitution. And if he goes and takes affirmative actions to meddle in these elections, he very well can be breaking state law, and perhaps again and again and again, and having his officials do it as well. I mean, look, those FBI agents, I don't know, the ones who were doing the raid, maybe they thought that the search warrant they had was legitimate and the cause was legitimate. But if there are conversations and emails out there that show that Donald Trump really just wanted to go, not because he truly suspected interference from China, but because he wanted to go and do what he said he wanted to do in 2020, which is find 11,000 votes to get himself to be president, well, he's just broken state law again. And so the warning I issued the other week, Allison, was to any of these people who work under the president and think he can protect you because he's the president and you can go invade these states and meddle around in their election systems, you better watch out, because there's a real good chance if Donald Trump's motivation is to play around in that election that you're violating the law and state law. And he can't pardon you for that. He doesn't have the pardon power to keep you from getting prosecuted under state law. And I'd be very surprised if we end this year without a bunch of states and attorneys general and investigative agencies looking into the president and his lieutenants.
Yeah. And so then what about the red states, right? That aren't going to prosecute. But the other problem, obviously, that, as you know very well, that we have is there's no more Bill Barr, there's no more Krebs, there's no more Miles Taylor, there's no more Hirschman, there's no more Rosen and Donahue at the DOJ, there's no more Esper. These guys are all gone. So now you've got Hegseth and Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi. And that's quite frightening. That you have all these sycophants willing to trample all over the Constitution just to support Donald Trump. So it's going to be interesting to see what this particular Supreme Court feels about how much due regard and deference is owed to him when it comes to protecting elections under what he will call his Article 2 powers and the take care clause to take care that the laws are executed faithfully, because I'm the president and I get to do whatever I want. It'll be interesting to see what the Supreme Court says about this, given their history of being very, very, they overturned Dobbs on states' rights, you know, or excuse me, they overturned Roe through Dobbs on states' rights. It'll be interesting to see where they come out on this, given Pryor's decision in the 11th Circuit, and what they feel about unitary executive and how much power they continue to like to give Donald Trump.
Can you share a little bit more about the scary path in the red states? And when you say, you know, well, let's think about what will happen in the red states. Can you share a bit more there?
Well, I'm thinking about, for example, the reason that we're seeing ICE operations in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, is because we're blue states here, and we don't see, even though they have 1.2 million undocumented persons in Texas and only 300,000 in Minneapolis. We've got 3,000 ICE agents in Minneapolis because there's a battle there, and they think that they can, get the voter rolls and the voter records if they, write a ransom note. But when it comes to voting, Greg Abbott's going to go along with whatever he says. Miles, wasn't there a situation earlier this year where they didn't like a particular law? Donald Trump and Greg Abbott didn't like a particular law in Texas, so the Department of Justice sued, and they got together and said, we'll settle and get rid of that law. I mean, that's where you're going to see. So, and I think a lot of this go on, as much as he wants to do this in swing states. I think we'll see a lot of it in major cities in red states because he's not going to get an attorney general or a district
Right.
attorney to file charges. And I think that's why it's important that there's organizations like Defiance, like Democracy Docket, that will take that on, is because he's going to get a lot of cooperation from attorneys general in red states.
Well, I hope those people remember, and then Miles, I'll turn it over to you. I hope they remember that Trump's popularity is not transferable as far as we've seen. Everyone he's endorsed does terribly. Everyone gets crushed for his actions that he asked them to take. And we saw this a little bit in Georgia, right? Rafflesberger pushed back. They had Kemp as a governor, so they had a red, Secretary of State and governor. Yeah. And so we did see people push back, and I hope this next wave of electeds at the state level are going to remember that everyone except for Trump is held accountable for Trump's BS anytime they play along with it. They lose popularity, they lose elections, and sometimes they go to jail. And so, that's my
just be careful.
And you can't pardon the state crimes, right? Like Miles brought up.
Can't pardon the state crimes. I mean, look, that's what, at least from a legal perspective, I'm going to be watching this year. Donald Trump may have this fantasy of taking over elections, and a lot of ignorant people in his administration will not know that in carrying out his wildest dreams, they're breaking the law, and they're potentially putting themselves in federal prison for a long time, putting themselves in state penitentiaries for a long time. Go ahead.
That's why he sent that pardon out to Rudy and Chesbro and everybody who helped him with the fraudulent elector scheme, right? That was his flair, saying, I'll pardon you if you help me steal future elections, even though it was a useless pardon because they were all charged under state crimes. Now, obviously, the Fulton County thing went away because of the disqualification of Fani Willis, and then what was his name? Pete Scandalakis, Scandal's right in his name, took over the case himself and dismissed it. But yeah, I think that the message we want to continue to drive home and repeat over and over again is your state. If you violate state election laws, you are not immune and no one can pardon you out of it.
That's right. And Allison, I wanted to ask you a bigger question, which is what we can be doing to secure the elections. And I say this partly also selfishly to do a little bit of a call to action, because our members at defiance.org have said, we want to spend our member fees and our time and our efforts on that, on securing the midterms. Before this all happened, we had a big member meeting in December. We got another one tomorrow night where our members said, this is what we're most worried about next year, is Donald Trump meddling in elections. And so we've got some big announcements over the next couple of weeks of causes that we're going to fund to make sure that we protect these elections. But I was talking about it with my wife last night, and this phrase came to mind that we need to make the midterm elections too big to rig. And what I mean by that is the turnout from people around this country needs to be so overwhelming that Donald Trump trying to say, there was 1,000 votes here or 1,000 votes here won't work, because he won't even have the ability to try to play these games on the margins to suppress the vote, that it will be so overwhelming that the election itself is just too big for him to rig. Maybe that's pie in the sky, but I want to get your thoughts on how we best secure the 2026 vote.
Oh no, that was my whole slogan going into 2018. Vote in numbers too big to manipulate, vote too big to rig. For call to action, what I would do, especially if you live in a city that Donald Trump likes to target, perhaps you have a lot of black and brown voters in your city, Detroit, Atlanta, etc. Make sure that there's a coalition. You build a coalition of people, or find people, or contact your local, Indivisible, 5051, whatever. Get a group of people together. Get in touch with your local registrar. Our elections take place in like 150,000 places around the country. Get in touch with your local and state and maybe county registrar, however it works where you are in whatever state you are, and ask them, encourage them to tell you what the plan is to sort of, protect our votes against potential seizing of voting machines, potential mail-in ballots. Call your Secretary of State. If you're in, Arizona, call the Secretary of State. In Colorado, Jenna Griswold, I believe. Call your Secretary of State and say, what are you doing? What is your plan? And if you don't have a plan, let's put a plan together. Because the last thing we need is for Hegseth to send the military in to seize voting machines on election night, right? So that's what I would do, because we control our elections at the local level. Our ballots are counted locally. What are they doing to protect those counting offices where they count our ballots? That's what I would really do, is to kind of make this sort of a bottom-up, middle-out protection of our voting apparatus. And we can do it city by city, county by county, and state by state.
Amen. Well, I will just say, Allison Gill, we want to have you on more often, my friend. It's wonderful to have you here. I suspect, unfortunately, given all the chaos that's happening, we're going to ask you a lot to come join us and help us to understand what's happening. But also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say you are one of the super courageous ones out there. You have been in this fight for a very long time, and we are just so grateful to be in it with you, my friend.
You too, right back at you. And thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing defiance.org. Thanks for helping organize these things. People feel so rudderless. People feel helpless. It is up to us, as we know. No one single person's coming to save us. And so when you organize like this and you get people together, boy, it's extremely powerful. Look what Minneapolis did. And what they've been able to do, how many lives they've been able to save. And we're going to start seeing that pop up around the country too. So thanks for everything that you're doing to help organize people and give them actionable items, things that they can do, tangible things they can do to help protect democracy.
Well, just before we let you go, Allison, if people aren't already following you and your latest, where can they find you?
I'm Mueller, She Wrote everywhere. Also, I have a Substack, MuellerSheWrote.com. Everything's free. I host the Daily Beans podcast, also free. Everything's free, no paywalls. You know, if you've not listened to the Daily Beans before, check it out. We would love to have you. It's news with swearing.
We're inspired by that. We've tried our best to keep things PG-13, but on some days it's just like we're going straight into R-rated territory because
and it's not gratuitous or anything, but there is appropriate profanity here and there. So.
That's right. Allison Gill, thank you for joining us, my friend. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
I hope folks do listen to her on Daily Beans. It's fantastic. Her network also has a number of really great pods and amazing people. And of course, follow her on Substack. Allison's just fantastic. And Xander, I'm glad to hear her say, you know, too big to rig is also going to be their mantra going into this year. I mean, we really got to start preparing people now for the fact that their responsibility this year, unfortunately, I hate to tell you folks, it's bigger than it's been in any other year you've ever voted. I'm not going to do the whole, this is the most important election of all time. Like, I think that's a given. But I think the bigger thing is
you still dance whatever you do. I like the beginning of that.
But your responsibilities are bigger. Like, you know, you can go and fill out your ballot. That's great. I'm going to do more than tell you you need to go vote. I'm going to tell you your job this year is not just to go vote. You have to go help other people vote. You have to help them understand what the law is. If we don't all do that, and I mean, actually, I'm not just speaking to the motivated people who are watching. I'm speaking to literally everyone who's watching. If we don't infect this country with the idea that they have to also protect their neighbors' right to vote and friends and family's right to vote, we will not be able to push back against this meddling. What we need to be able to do is, as the voter suppression and voter intimidation tactics roll out throughout the year, be able to calmly tell people, no, he's wrong. You're allowed to fill in a mail-in ballot. Don't listen to DHS saying it's too dangerous. You have a right to. No, he's wrong. Federal agents don't have the ability to arrest you at the polls. You can go safely vote. You need me to pick you up in my car and drive you there? I'm going to pick you up in my car and drive you there. We all need to be that hands-on when it comes to the 2026 midterm elections. That's how we overwhelm them. That's how we make this too big to rig. That's what we're going to have to do because, unfortunately, we now have enough evidence to say the president of the United States is trying to rig this election actively. But you know what? We have the ability to stop him. So that would be my message, Xander.
Yeah, I'm reading right now. I'm reading On Freedom by Tim Snyder. And he talks about one of the things you're working against with fascism or authoritarianism is this feeling of inevitability. And it can feel, you know, I think we've all felt it the last 10 years. We're stuck in this stalemate. You know, it's 51-49, 49-51, et cetera. But there's been lots of times in U.S. history where we were in a moment like that. And then all of a sudden it was 90-10. You know, JFK wasn't a nail biter. And then the following election, I want to make sure I get these facts right, won 486 electoral votes to Barry Goldwater's 52. Reagan, Jimmy Carter had a similar outcome. So the nation can shift, and we need to keep remembering that is possible for us. And thought that crossed my mind, as we've said a couple times, where are the states' right people? Where are the 2A people? Where are these different demographics? We need to invite them into the coalition and try to make it easy for them to join, because it's easy to be filled with outrage about the hypocrisy of, you said this then, where are you now? And I get it. It is enraging. But if we are going to expand the pie to the point where, to your point, it's too big to rig, we need to find those folks, find the leaders, the right messengers from those different demographics, and find a way to welcome them into this coalition, because we need to survive this moment in a big, big way. And we can continue to work it out later, like we've been doing in this democracy for 250 years.
Amen, brother. Amen. And I'll just say, we're going to jump to our section, Who is Joining the Defiance? But before we do, Xander, we were going to talk a good bit about how Democrats are on the upswing and they have the wind at their backs. And I will just say, that's also a thing to be encouraged about and to worry about, is because Donald Trump sees that. He sees that Democrats are crushing in normally very solidly red Republican districts. A crazy thing is happening. I mean, all indicators in this country point to the potential of a blue wave this year, a blue tsunami. Trump is so terrified about it that almost every week already in this new year, he has talked in some way, shape, or form about meddling in, taking over, or canceling elections. Like, that is, his mind is obsessed with this. And so that's why we have to be on our game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's going to allow for that blue tsunami is the amount of people who see themselves as blue now. We have Joe Walsh on the program. No one would have thought Joe Walsh would be part of a blue tsunami at some point,
Certainly
right? George Conway. Even the elections where Mamdani and Spanberger won on the same night, very different people. Yeah. And so some of that is speaking to, the kind of reaction to Trump, but a lot of it is just a broad coalition of, electeds and folks running for office now see that they can't be aligned with the Republican Party because they refuse to defend things like states' rights. And even if they're fiscally conservative or conservative in some other vertical, they see themselves now as a Democrat if they had to choose between the two.
That's right, man. Things are changing. Times are changing. Well, our final segment, Who is Joining the Defiance? Today, in this segment, we go to a podcaster, but not just any podcaster, but one of the podcasters that has been pointed to as leading the pipeline from Donald Trump into the manosphere. Andrew Schulz of the wildly popular Flagrant podcast seems to have seen the light. Here he is on last week's episode, dishing out penance. Take a look.
There's probably people like you guys are the last ones that I want to hear talk about this. I don't think any of us are having this conversation to like curry any like goodwill or, get people to like us or something like that. This is something that is undeniably abhorrent and we should be called out. Simple as that. Like, it's disgusting.
I get the frustration. People are like, oh, but you guys were with them, da-da-da.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I get it.
100%. I get it. Yeah. Again, if you never want to watch another thing again because we have Trump, that is totally fine. Respect it. I completely get it. You're 100% allowed to be frustrated.
We made that decision knowing it was open to criticism. All right, there it is.
No knock on any criticism. That being said, like moving forward, we don't just like stay silent when something has this. Like if we do have a platform, there's people that we're talking to, and we see something that is just so blatant. There's no like partisan with this. If you see it with your own eyes, you know exactly what happened. And there's something disgusting that's happening, not only in Minneapolis, I'm sure it's happening in other parts of the United States, where it's ICE is under the guise of security, right? Under the guise of safety, because that's what they're doing, right? Is every time something horrific happens, they keep going, but look at the we got. Look at the murderers we got. Look at all the violent criminals we got. I looked at the numbers. It's 5% of the people they deported are violent criminals.
Yes.
There's probably more in the Oval Office.
Exactly. Exactly. If you bring up another about deporting and you're not releasing the Epstein list, just shut the up, all of you.
Yes.
I don't want to hear anything else about, we got to deport the They're right here.
Yeah.
They're right here. They're a list of them, and you're not exposing it. And this is the thing that we've been asking for even before Trump was in office.
Damn, Xander. Another MAGA podcaster out. And I can't believe I'm saying Andrew Schulz is joining the Defiance, but he is, because these people, like he said, are seeing with their eyes what's happening.
this is a little bit of the downside of new media, right? Like that there's not necessarily the kind of journalistic integrity demands just because someone can launch a successful podcast or whatnot. And I feel like new media, like Joe Rogan, like Andrew Schultz, some of these guys are starting to understand that they do have an obligation to society when they have a platform quite that big. So that's good to hear. But the other thing I would say, and it's great that I'm happy he came with facts too, because sometimes they're kind of mealy-mouthed about this. They came with facts and shouted out that only 5% of the people being deported were criminals. The other thing I'll say, though, is let's not get confused and go back to a time where we're looking to celebrities and business leaders and famous people in general or successful people in general for leadership. It's clear they lead from behind and they won't stick their neck out when times are dangerous. Part of what we're seeing, this shift, is because it's safer to come out because a bunch of everyday people tested out if it was safe or not. And so I want to make sure as we welcome them into the coalition, I just spoke of this, they should be welcomed in. We should not go back to a time where we confuse celebrity or business fame and acumen as leadership. Look to ourselves for leadership. Look to our local leaders for leadership. Look to people who are doing things that look brave in the moment. And so, happy to welcome everyone back, but let's remember that. Let's remember that we can trust ourselves, our community, and keep looking to those groups for how we move in the world.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, Xander. And you mentioned this earlier, too, is that we have to be open to this whole effort being a big tent effort. I had a conversation today with one of our friends, friend of the program, Waj Ali, on his program. And also earlier today with on Don Lemon's program with Katie Fang, who was hosting, and talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and talking about how, there's a lot of folks, including a lot of people watching right now, who are like, why do I care what Marjorie Taylor Greene has to say? She's crazy. She's a bigot. She talks about Jewish space lasers. She got us into this mess. Okay. All of those things are valid. But guess what? She has turned on the president from within his party and is peeling folks away from him. And if you don't understand why this is important, then I want you to think about an analogy. The United States of America teamed up with Joseph Stalin, right? The figurehead of communism, that we were at war with communism. And we teamed up with Joseph Stalin against Hitler. It's not because we were like, well, suddenly we really like Joseph Stalin and we really like communism. No, it was because there was a greater evil. So if you don't have an open mind and an open heart to bringing people in from the cold, from the MAGA movement, then I'm going to tell you right now, we will lose this. We will lose this. You will lose this. And enjoy being in Donald Trump's third term America, Donald Trump's fourth term as president of the United States. Because just staying in your silo, no matter how deep blue your silo is, guess what? It didn't prevent us from getting Donald Trump in the first term, didn't prevent us from getting the second term. You know what will hold him accountable? A big tent and more people. So I would say this, and this includes from your comments on social media, right, to what you say out there in your community. Be open to bringing those people over, because you know what? I'll tell you, like the Andrew Schultzes we just saw in that podcast, a lot of them right now in their consciences are thinking, this is bad. I've got to get out. And if they then show up at the barbecue and someone says, you know what we should do? We should put all of them in prison. If they voted for Donald Trump, we should put them in prison. Guess what they're not going to do?
Yeah, they're going to
speak their conscience. They're going to say, shit, it seems really dangerous. What I'll do is just shut up. We don't want that to happen. We want to say there is place to defect. We got a big tent over here. And you know what our party platform is? The United States Constitution.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, it's especially important in this moment where, to your point about silos, we don't have access to a lot of the people we need access to. So if these folks are willing to be a mouthpiece for democracy and to help educate their community, we should be doing outreach. There should be also a grass tops effort to do outreach, say like, look, you got it wrong. It was a big deal getting it wrong. We tried to warn you ahead of time, but here's how you pay penance. Continue. We'll help you. We'll help you with the facts. We'll help you with the most important things to be sharing with your audience. This is how you pay penance and help us get out of this thing if you're really feeling bad about it. It was a great start. Not only saying, we did something wrong, but here's some facts to support why you should also change your mind. We should certainly be supporting the decentralized media environment, especially those that reach red audiences. And that's something for, Miles, you and I to reflect on as we keep thinking about infrastructure to support.
For sure. Let's take some questions from defiance.org members. Remember, as always, you can drop questions into the chat if you are a member of defiance.org over on the Substack channel. Mediocre Mama, love the name, Mediocre Mama. Action points for UK Defiance, please. Mediocre Mama, thank you for asking that. Look, we want people who support restoring the rule of law in this country to be able to help out no matter where they are, anywhere in the world. I mean, one thing I would say to folks who are citizens of foreign countries who watch is encourage your governments to have a backbone. Encourage your governments not to just keep capitulating to Donald Trump. And we saw this with Greenland. Finally, European countries realized, we can't do the nice guy thing anymore with him. No, we're not going to give you Greenland. In fact, we're going to send our troops onto territory in Greenland. So keep reinforcing their spines if you're a citizen of a foreign country. If you're an American living abroad in one of these places, you can take a lot of our actions that we announce every single week. Usually on Wednesdays, we have our weekly mission brief. We announce those actions. A lot of different ways for you to chip into the fight. So make sure that on Wednesdays you tune in with us. And if you're a member, we'll push those out to you. But also, Mediocre Mama, Xander and I will give some thoughts to what are things that people internationally who are supporting the Defiance can do on top of all of that to make sure the rule of law is restored in the United States, because, you know, it happens to affect the rest of the world, whether or not the United States falls to autocracy.
No kidding. Yeah. And when we pay our penance and defeat this guy, please help welcome us back in once we've shown that we can get our stuff together and elect responsible people and not tear apart, you know, the partnerships and alliances across the democracies of the world. We will be paying for this for some time, I'm sure. But, you know, we'd love for our international friends to see what America can be once we're back on top.
Yeah. That's right, man. That's right. Let's see. We've got some other questions. Jenny Bloom asks, recently joined here. How do I get this newsletter? Jenny, I'm glad that you asked. You should, if you joined, automatically be getting all of the communications from defiance.org. If you're not, then I urge you to go over to defiance.org, scroll to the very bottom of the page, and there's a link that says Manage My Membership. And that will tell you, if you're having problems getting the emails from Substack, how to fix things and make sure that we are top of your inbox. So all the emails that we send with daily updates come from defiance@substack.com. So add us to your favorites if you are a member, and things should start working in your inbox. Thank you for asking that question. Xander, we've got another question here from Sass Rider. Sass Rider, great to see you in the chat, who says, can we please help this group? The group you posted in the chat is Vote Riders at voteriders.org. This looks like an organization that helps with voter ID assistance, including explaining what real ID is, resources for trans and non-binary voters, and even ID laws broken down by states. Sass Rider, we will take a look. Maybe Xander can tease a little bit of some of what we're planning for February on the Protect the Vote front.
Yeah, I'll do that. And also say, you know, to Sass Rider and Urban Hermit, who also said, when are you going to have Election Truth Alliance on? Tomorrow we're having our member meeting. And at the member meeting, at every member meeting, the first thing we do is ask people, what should we focus on over the next couple months? So that's going to be great. It's my favorite day of the month is our member meetings. We do breakouts. We have conversations. We ask the members what direction this is a member-led organization. Miles and I do our best to kind of fulfill the request of our members. Over the next couple of weeks, though, we have a exciting docket. The last time we did one of these, people wanted to talk about turnout at the midterm, specifically youth turnout. And so on February, I think it's 11th or 12th, I don't have my calendar in front of me, the following Wednesday, we're going to be focusing on turning out the youth, both youth leadership and youth turnout in the midterms. And then following up on that week, we're going to talk about election protection, particularly the roles of Secretary of States and other election officials, and how we can support making sure we have a safe and secure election that the federal government cannot mess with.
Amen. I will say one other thing for folks that they can do this month is we are spending a lot of time behind the scenes preparing for February 24th, preparing to host the biggest rebuttal to Donald Trump's State of the Union. That won't be hosted by the Democratic Party. That won't be hosted from some other organization you've never heard of. Defiance.org will be hosting the biggest rebuttal to Donald Trump's State of the Union at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., co-hosted with independent news organization Courier and with the incredible Portland Frog Brigade. So what's my ask? My ask here, folks, is I'm sure most of you are going to be watching it virtually or attending, but make sure people that you know join us. You can either live stream it for free. You can buy tickets to come in person. You can buy VIP tickets to have a special viewing experience online. There's a lot of ways. 100% of the proceeds go towards the event and the pro-democracy cause, and some very cool activations that we're going to announce in Washington, D.C. around that event. It's an all-star lineup. What can you do? Please, please, please help us make this as big as possible. We want Donald Trump not just to hear about it, but to be pissed off about it, because we've done a better job than he did of speaking to the nation. And we've recruited some of the best pro-democracy figures in the country to talk about threats to our country, to the rule of law, the abuses of power of this administration, and to tell the truth. This is going to be a 4+ hour event, and it's got some amazing things that are going to happen before and during. So help us get the word out there. Defiance.org/SOTU, SOTU. Xander, you look like you want to jump in.
We were just going over the run of show today, the music that we're going to play, the games we're going to play. It's also going to be just very fun. It's going to be a great time.
Very fun. Yeah, we can't just be like, we can't just act like we're living inside of a haunted house that has no exit. I know it feels that way every day. And you know what? Let me just play with the analogy. If we are living in a haunted house that has no exit, well then, damn it, let's put on some costumes. Let's take the place over. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be inspiring, and it's going to be a very real opportunity for us to grab the national megaphone as a group, as an organization, and to push back against the lies. And I think closer to the date, Xander, we can reveal some of these other things that are going to happen. But just look, folks, come prepared. If you want to don a frog suit, the frog, which has basically become the symbol of the resistance. If you want to don a frog suit, you're going to have that opportunity. And we're going to have frog suits there for folks to be able to wear what has become the coolest protest symbol in America.
You know, I also want to say before we log off here, you know, I think Miles really been the workhorse behind this, than a woman named Stacy on our team. We've done a great job. We talked
just to see our producer shake her head like, oh no.
I was too lost in my thoughts. I'm sorry. I didn't give that the appreciation.
No, go ahead. I just made a horse sound and interrupted you.
That's fair. That's fair. The lineup we put together also is reflective of that broad coalition that we've been talking about and how many folks we have to get involved. We got everyone, you know, from Democratic governor candidate Stacey Abrams to Steve Bullock, you know, a former Republican governor. Joe Walsh is on there, and so is Black Voters Matter leader LaTosha Brown. And so hopefully what we show that night is not only positivity, optimism, and a counter to the lies that are going to be told, but a window into the broad coalition of people that can have a good time while saving democracy together. That's my hope for the night. And it really, you know, looking at everything today with the team, it really looks like we're going to be able to fulfill that promise.
Yes, 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 indeed. Well, as always, folks, thank you for joining us. Just remember, tomorrow, if you're not a member of defiance.org, there will be no Defiance Daily. If you are a member of defiance.org, we will be having our monthly member meeting at this time at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you're a member, you will get the link tomorrow in your email, the Zoom link to join us for the monthly member meeting. Mark that in your calendars. We're very excited to take your feedback and to vote on the direction of the causes that we are going to support next. Until then, as always, friends, stay loud, stay brave, stay together, and we'll see you back here for a regular episode of Defiance Daily on Thursday. Thanks for joining us.